Welcome to On the Edge of Health and Design, the podcast where healthcare meets design, with your hosts, Nita and Sylvia. Today we're speaking with Tye Farrow, an architect and author of Constructing Health: How the Built Environment Enhances Your Mind's Health. Tye is the first Canadian architect with a master's degree of neuroscience applied to architectural design, and he also holds a master's in architecture and urban design from Harvard University. Farrow partners have delivered projects across North America, the Caribbean, Asia, Africa, and the Middle East, and several ideas and projects have been published in books, newspapers, and other media throughout the world. Tye has initiated a global cause health movement aimed at raising expectations for design as the basis for total health, which extends beyond environmental, sustainability, and physical health to encompass our mind health, connects the dots between neuroscience and architecture. Thank you for being here with us today, Tye.
How nice to spend some time with both of you.
Hi, Tye. So to start off our interview, we ask all of our guests this season, what does design for health mean to you?
It's a very good question, and I think there's a lot to unravel behind that. But I think starting, we don't often really think about how our surroundings affect us. And I think to some degree, we often think that we're separated from our surroundings. And I think it comes out of a little bit of that thinking of, way back when René Descartes, the French philosopher in the early 1600s, who said our mind and our body are two separate things, which we've discovered that they aren't. And we often think that, we're separated as individuals and cultures from, our natural environment. And clearly we've determined that we're not, that we're closely interconnected together. And so we're beginning to realize that the places around it, the places we occupy, they shape our thoughts, our memories, our emotions, and effectively our health. And a lot of the new research and evidence that is coming out shows that really our environment actually changes our biology and our physiology. And this is really challenging all past assumptions about place and what it does to our health and well-being, meaning that the design of the environments have the ability to cause health as we would define it. And what do I mean by that? Well, what we do know is that between our mind and our body, there is a bi-directional effect that's multisensory around our perception. What does that mean? It means that if somebody say pricks you with a needle, your mind tells your body, so bottom up, that something's happened to, your body tells your mind that something's happened to you, and you feel the pain. But we also know that, say, we go to a great concert or we hear some music or we're having a great meal or something or great conversation with somebody, that your mind begins to quiet down, things that are happening in your body. And what that means is that our environment, with all of the senses, multisensory from smell and sight and touch, they communicate, the design of the environment communicates messages to us which have the ability to cause health. And I think then if we take that one step further to the question for me, and some of that we pose in the book, is this idea, what if health were the basis for judging every public space and every building? And more importantly, what if we stopped tolerating the built environments where we live, where we work, where we play, where we heal? What happens if we stop tolerating design that causes boredom, dis-ease, and I'm using that word very specifically, and depression? And we saw a lot of that coming out of COVID. And really the idea to sit back and think, how do buildings make us feel? And how can they make us feel better?
I absolutely agree that environments have such a big impact on our well-being, where we live, where we work, how we navigate the world. So, can you briefly tell us about your professional journey and what was maybe the one thing or a few things that inspired you to write your book, Constructing Health?
I'll step back briefly. I grew up. My father is a retired architect, and he designed our family home. And so, as I progressed, obviously, your environments influence you. The basis of our discussion. I think that was in the background. I ended up did a Bachelor of Architecture at University of Toronto, then, as you mentioned, went to Harvard, and then set up my own practice and we designed a whole variety of building types, including some hospitals. And some hospitals, when you walked in the lobby, we used a lot of mass timber and they looked very much tree-like. And we were doing that because we knew in our gut, I knew in my stomach, that, when you walk to environments, and some environments give you that good feeling and that extra spring in your step, and certainly a lot of hospitals do the opposite. So I began to realize that, the environment influences how we feel. We also got very involved in designing some of the very first buildings of their type very early on that were very highly rated from the lead environmental design standards. So I understand that design had an impact on our natural environment. And we began some of the buildings we were involved with, that design had a significant impact on societal health, how people could come together and share ideas and want to linger and stay. And then before the pandemic, about 2 years, I came across a book written by a lady called Sarah Goldhagen, Welcome to Your World. And it was the first, she is a New York Times writer, also a professor, and she really wrote a book that began to popularize the idea, bring it widely out, of the intersection between neuroscience and cognitive science, which is really perception, and architecture. And I thought this book was amazing because it opened my eyes to a lot of things that I knew in my gut, that relationship of walking into that space and either feeling good or not. And it opened my eyes to that because there was real science linked to it. And through that, I discovered a body called the Academy of Neuroscience for Architecture, based at the Salk Institute in San Diego. And so I went to one of their conferences, I put in some papers, I got accepted, and I could speak. But through that group, I discovered a new field, a new degree that was being offered at the University of Venice. And it was in its first year, and it was called a Master of Neuroscience Applied to Architecture and Design. And so I went to meet the director. I told him some of the things I was doing and what I was thinking of, and could I apply? And he said I could, and I could do it as a fly-in student. So the work that we're doing in Europe and in Ireland and in Israel, I could go there and study for a week, a month, with some of the world's arguably leading neuroscientists, cognitive scientists, sociologists, psychologists. And it was just a group of, say, 15 students and these wonderful people in a room together. And I used the book as a vehicle to really try and put this information together, but more importantly, to widely disseminate it. And the book is a #1 bestseller on Amazon right now in all its category. And in the Canadian market, it is being picked up by Indigo. And it was the #1 choice of Indigo's top book buyer of all the books that they look at. And what's important for me is that This book can be a textbook for students in design or cognitive sciences or neuroscience. It can be a resource for medical types or design types in the same way. But more importantly, it's 11 inches square. It's got 450 images to it, 300 pages, and it's very easy to read. It's not pretentious. And it sold over 1,000 copies in a few months. And what it's doing is trying to get something out that once you see this, you can't unsee it.
I went through your book, and it is quite easy to read, and it's very easy to navigate. So I would recommend it. It's very fascinating, and it's a topic that everybody should definitely be aware of. Tye, can you explain the difference between mind health versus mental health and what impact architecture has on mind health?
The thing is that mental health is seen as more of a pathogenic thing or a disease that needs to be managed and treated, and that's very important. But I'm using the word mind health, and mind health, mental health is often seen in more of a deficit-based view of health. And mind health, I'm defining that as an asset-based view of what health is. And what do I mean by that? An asset-based view is you go to the gym in the morning and you ride the bike or you do cardio, and that's to strengthen your muscles and your body, meaning that it's trying to improve your health. And I'm defining and using the word mind health as an asset-based view because the environment and an idea called environmental enrichment has the ability to strengthen our mind. So not just stopping bad things from happening, but in fact, really strengthening, clarifying, and enhancing.
I think you already explained around an asset-based approach to health, which you mentioned that term salutogenics.
Yes.
Is that how you say it?
Yes.
Versus pathogenic. And actually, that's the first time I heard of that former term, salutogenics. And I come from sort of a healthcare background. So everything is, absence of disease, the pathogenesis of disease. But it's really refreshing to hear looking at things from the opposite perspective.
That is a mindset we've been in for about 150 years. And in the book, I trace really the health, our view of how we've seen health. And, for 3,000 years of human history, if you go back to traditional Chinese medicine, all the way up to now, for 3,000 years, we've had this view that's more salutogenic. What do I mean by that? Well, the word comes from the roots of solus, the Latin word meaning health, and genesis meaning the origin. And so there was a lot of focus. Think of traditional Chinese medicine, or in fact how it relates to space. It was more on how can we cause and enhance our health. But in fact, in the last 150 years, sort of a bit with that René Descartes and the rational view that sort of moved specifically into Western evidence-based medicine, that was more pathogenic, the Latin and the Greek words of patho, disease, and genesis, the origin, on a disease-based or how to stop bad things from happening. And just stopping bad things from happening seems to be setting the bar really low. And it was in 1910 that there was something called the Fetzner Report that came out. And that was directed at all medical organizations around the world, all the leading ones, Harvard, Yale, and how we taught people. And effectively, the report said that if it wasn't evidence-based Western medicine, it effectively was witchcraft. And so thousands, hundreds and thousands of years of thinking was pitched out of the door. And as you well know, that is changing right now. We're beginning to go back and have more of a holistic view on what activates health as opposed to just stopping bad things from happening.
Mm-hmm.
But salutogenesis, which is a complicated word to pronounce, it was really created by a guy called Aaron Atanovsky, an Israeli-American sociologist and doctor. And he studied people that went through things that were very bad. One example being the Holocaust. But he wanted to understand why some people went through these terrible conditions, but they still had a clear focus on the way forward. And he sort of summarized it around this idea of a sense of coherence. And a sense of coherence is sort of tied a little bit, like you can imagine, like a sense of purpose. If you wake up in the morning and you don't have a sense of purpose, you probably don't want to get out of bed. And he buttressed the idea of a sense of coherence around three other ideas, which is really around the idea of comprehensibility. Can you understand things around you? Manageability. Do you believe or you think you have the tools to manage those situations? And also meaningfulness. And meaningfulness is that, again, if you have purpose or you have meaning, that will drive you forward. And you can translate that into our mind health. But also you can translate it into the environments around us, meaning, are they coherent? Are they comprehensible? When you walk up to the front of the building, do you know where the front door is? When you get in, does it help you manage your way through? And is it an environment that gives you an extra spring in your step? Think of walking into, say, simple example is a cathedral, and you walk in and you say, wow, and you look up and you feel inspired. We know a lot of environments like that, but we know a lot of environments that suck the life out of us. And that's a lot of the learning environments we're in, as well as the healing environments.
Yeah, for sure. And speaking of purpose, a lot of older adults tend to kind of lose their purpose as their life circumstances change. And since we're based here in Canada, we'd like to highlight one of your organization's projects here, the Treehouse for Multi-Generational Living. What inspired this design, and how do you think it serves the unique needs of older adults?
Well, it is, for us, a very important project, and one that's actually taken us onto a trajectory that has got us into something else that's very similar to it. But the Treehouse was really beginning an initial idea to create housing, meaningful housing for more of an elderly population. It began to explore the idea that the building on the ground level, in fact, would have housing for some young families or, say, students. And then some of the upper suites began to have suites of varying size for people that were moving out of their main accommodation. And sometimes you see buildings like that where the common spaces are put on the ground floor. We took those, put them up into the middle of the building, made it 2-story in height. And there are also spaces that have a common kitchen and dining area that can come together, places to share. In fact, mailboxes and things were there. The elevators would take you up to that mid-level, which you would come out, and then you would go up or down in an elevator if you needed to. But the exit stairs were very wide, very shallow height that you had to walk up. They had stopping points. They had daylight, effectively meaning that the stairs could be something that add to your physical health also. That idea, to take a step further, we're now working with a Swiss economist, and we're involved in something that's called Hillside. He has a vision that he can help a lot of the things that are happening in our societal issue right now about depression, disconnection of old and young. And it is affordable housing, but it's intergenerational. And there's a mix of housing for families with young children, elderlies, as well as studios for a range of different people. In it, it has a kindergarten. It's got a micro green food growing facility that can feed 8,000 people. Think of it as an industry that feeds the people within the building as well as the community beyond. There's about 400 people in total. It's divided in 4 buildings. There's a number of gardens and common areas, social areas. You can go from the ground floor and you can climb up the buildings, slope up over top of the kindergarten, some of the other buildings, and in fact climb the whole way up to the top of the building. And along that way, there's a number of social areas. There's shared gardens, allotment gardens. And so the idea that it is intentionally mixing people together, because we know that young people learn from older people stay young from growing with younger people. Older people can help middle-aged people that are stressed out and busy by looking after the kids. So there's a whole intergenerational thing that causes health, not only physical health from climbing up the building and the microgreen production, societal health by being intergenerational, and mind health, coming back to that sense of coherence, manageability, comprehensibility, and meaningfulness.
It's a great project. I mean, you're essentially just building a community.
It's in a lot of ways, it's not really new, but the only reason it's new is we haven't been doing it. We're building affordable houses, and the focus on rapid assembly building, which we're doing, it's all mass timber, but you need to create places that create generosity and dignity that help people get an extra spring in their step to move forward. And I worry that a lot of the affordable housing we're building these days looks like 1950s motels, and it worries me.
So on the other side of that, what can we do today to improve our health in the architecture that we use right now? What changes can be made to the existing buildings to improve human health?
Well, the first thing is to begin to realize, which we outline in the book, that the way our mind builds person to place relationships with your surroundings, in fact, is the same way that we build person-to-person relationships. So you can think of person-to-person relationships that are meaning and generous, like a mentor that's helped you. Or you can think of relationships with people that are abusive, or you can think of people that aren't authentic. We need to think about what those characters and qualities are and look at the environments around us. And those are environments that are generous, maybe a road that you can walk down and sit. It has a canopy if it's raining, a tree that if it's shaded. You can smell the things around you. And also understand that the relationship we build is multi-sensorial. And so it's about scent and touch and sound. And, in your own environment, one example is you think of wood. Wood is very interesting visually. When you see it, it lowers your blood pressure, your heart rate. You want to linger. The smell of wood also, think of a sauna that you go into and the cedar wood. Same thing, it reduces the smell, certain types, reduce your heart rate and blood pressure and some of your stress levels, your stress chemicals. And in fact, the sound on walking of wood, between your beta and theta waves, theta being the positive kind, that the sound of walking on wood. So being able to use materials, and in fact, wood's a good one, that changes your physiology.
To me, it sounds like one key takeaway that you'd like to leave us with is that whole concept of mind health and salutogenetics, and moving from a disease-oriented view to a what creates health-oriented view.
Let me just build on that one last thing. If there's only one takeaway, there's only one thing you remember from this talk, I hope it is that there is no such thing as neutral space. There's no environment that you walk into that doesn't change your physiology, your biology, meaning that the space can be an accelerant for your health and well-being, or in fact, it can suck the life out of you. And that's most of the spaces we know. And so I think we need to just take that away. When you walk somewhere, just look at it and say, how am I feeling? And do I feel better or worse?
Yeah, that's a great point. What's your favorite building in the world and why?
I think there's a couple. I'm going to frame it on two sides of the spectrum. One building in Toronto and in Ontario that's getting a lot of debate right now is Ontario Place. And in fact, Eb Zeidler, who designed it, was a mentor of mine. What's exciting about that? You leave land, you walk across a bridge, you can look down at water, you're floating up in sky, you walk underneath the building, you can then crawl on top of the building, you can then crawl down, and there used to be a lot of great shops and restaurants by the water. You'd walk along a wood path, you would then walk up to, which used to be a beautiful form, to listen to music, sit on the grass, walk through the willow trees by water. It was very multimodal sensorial. And you could be up high over water, you could be down close to it, and you could be up in the sky. It's amazing, and there's not a lot of buildings like that, I think, in Canada. The other one on the other side is this place called the Green School in Bali. All of the buildings are built out of bamboo. It's a school environment that is an accelerant for learning for the people that are in it. And in fact, there's something called the Green community beside it right now, which is a number of houses, all made of bamboo, all very organic in their shapes, and all extraordinarily inspiring. But one is in steel, the other's in bamboo, and they're both multimodal, multisensorial, and give you a sense of coherence, that comprehensibility, manageability, and meaningfulness, meaning they cause health.
We'll add links to those buildings in our show notes. So if anybody is interested in looking more into those two buildings, the information will be available. And we have just one more question for you. How could our listeners connect with you?
The main things they can do is through Tye Farrow on Instagram or Tye Farrow at LinkedIn. We're just redoing our corporate profiles on both of those. So the personal one, they're both very, very informational rich. We're trying to share content and ideas that people can use, and they can go to farrowpartners.ca, which in fact we're just transforming. And the other thing, if you go on to Amazon, Constructing Health, How the Built Environment Enhances Your Mind's Health, you can get it on Amazon or in fact any leading bookstores.
Great. Thank you so much, Tye. This was such a great conversation. You have so much information and so much knowledge on this topic. So thank you so much for being here today and sharing all of this with us.
Great to spend some time together.
A quick summary of key points from this episode. Tye Farrow's book, Constructing Health, How the Built Environment Enhances Your Mind's Health, explores the intersection between how neuroscience is applied to architecture and design. In this interview, Tye explained that environments shape our thoughts, memories, emotions, and health. There is a bidirectional multisensory effect between our mind and body, meaning our environment communicates messages that can positively or negatively impact our health. Tye highlighted a key distinction between mind health and mental health. Mind health takes an asset-based approach, focusing on how environments can strengthen our cognitive and emotional well-being, whereas mental health typically addresses deficits. In addition, the concept of salutogenics is introduced, which studies the origins of health, in contrast to pathogenesis, which looks at the causes of disease. A sense of coherence, comprising of comprehensibility, manageability, and meaningfulness, is a central element in salutogenics, and these principles can be applied to the design of our surroundings. Additionally, Tye explained that materials such as wood have a positive effect on our physiology, helping to lower blood pressure, reduce heart rate, and alleviate stress. And finally, Tye emphasizes that there is no such thing as neutral space. Every environment has the potential to either improve or harm our health. Thank you for joining us on The Edge. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with others or leave a comment or rating. Stay tuned for more episodes of On the Edge of Health and Design.